You're listening to I Love This TV Show, The Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls, Season 2, Episode 24, To Catch a Neighbor. Original air date, May 2nd, 1987. In this episode, the girls have their new neighbors over. Sophia kicks them out. She slams the door as they leave. Dorothy tells her her behavior is horrible. Everyone but Sophia likes the new neighbors. Rose tells them she used to run the town welcome wagon back home. She then describes how they would welcome a new neighbor. The doorbell rings, and Blanche asks Sophia to get it. She grudgingly does. But the person who is on the other side tells her she should not open the door without finding out who it is first. Dorothy takes over. It's two police officers. One is a detective. Blanche decides to answer questions by offering some suggestive information about herself. Detective Mullins asks them about their neighbors, as they are stolen gems dealers. He informs them that the neighbors will be making a major deal in the next 3 days and would like to set up their stakeout at their house. Blanche agrees quickly, but Dorothy is furious and says no. They have a meeting in the kitchen. Blanche pleads her case. She wants the policeman there and hopes to have some kind of relationship with them. Rose points out it is a serious situation and they should help. She then tells a story about her father being a volunteer policeman. Both Dorothy and Sophia still say no, while Blanche and Rose say yes. They finally come to an agreement and allow the officers to stay there. Detective Mullins is set up at the kitchen table. Sophia is happily harassing him while he is wearing headphones. Blanche comes in. Sophia demonstrates. Blanche doesn't find it funny. She points out that Mullins is practically Dorothy's boyfriend. Blanche goes on a tangent and gets all worked up. She sprays herself down. Dorothy enters the kitchen and starts a fight with Mullins. Blanche defends him. He starts talking. He can hear them. He just pretends he can't because Sophia enjoys calling him names. Rose comes in and tells them that she saw the McDowells in the store and wrote down everything they bought. He decides to go out and smoke. He wants Dorothy to go with him. The two argue again. He leaves and Dorothy admits she is crazy about him. Another day, and Rose answers the door to find Martha McDowell standing there. Rose can only squeak. Blanche and Dorothy have to cover for Rose's squeaks. Mrs. McDowell invites them to dinner the next evening. Before she leaves, the two officers, not in uniform thankfully, exit the kitchen and enter the living room. She introduces herself. Sophia covers, saying it's her son and grandson on a fishing trip. She heads out and Jess asks them to let her know about dinner. The two officers argue about the ladies planting a bug. Mullins thinks it's too dangerous. Dorothy tries to remind Rose she does not do well under pressure. They all start discussing who should plant the bug. Dorothy says she should do it, as she is the best under pressure. That night, Dorothy is having trouble sleeping. Sophia asks her what's wrong. They wind up arguing. Dorothy admits she is worried about tomorrow and unsure if she should go on her mission. Sophia tells her this is one thing she can't help her with. Sophia thinks she's doing it to land Al, Mullins. Sophia has no story to help her this time and is not happy about it. She still comes up with some advice, though. The next evening, Rose is looking through the TV guide, trying to find something to stay home and watch instead of going to the McDowells. The officers come into the living room to go over the plan with them. Rose is going to tell a St. Olaf story. Al tells Dorothy how to deploy the bug. Sophia decides to join them in case they blow it and need help. The ladies leave, and Bobby confirms the transmitter is working. They arrive back from the dinner very excited. Mullins tells them this bug will hopefully give them enough in the next few hours for a warrant. Everyone goes to bed except Dorothy and Al. He tells her she did a nice job. He's trying to ask her out, but Sophia shouts it through the door. Blanche takes Bobby some extra towels. He thanks her. She tells him he reminds her of her son, Matthew. He asks if he can stop by sometime. She agrees and then tells him lights out. Later that night, Al is drinking coffee and listening to the wire. The exchange is happening. Al yells for Bobby and tells the ladies to get on the floor and stay down. They're all afraid. After the officers leave, they hear gunshots. Al runs back in. He calls for an ambulance and backup. Bobby has been shot. In the hospital, Bobby tells the story to the ladies of his shooting. Al brings in a wheelchair for Bobby. He tells everyone the McDowells have been arraigned and are going to jail for a long time. Sophia volunteers to push Bobby. Dorothy is left with Al again. He asks her out on a date. This time, she refuses because he could be killed on the job. Sophia comes in with a doctor for Dorothy. She's not amused. Favorite quotes. Detective Mullins. We'd like to set up shop here. Blanche. Well, of course. You can both stay in my room. Dorothy. Now wait just a minute. Blanche. Okay, you can have the boy. Blanche. Well, what's there to be afraid of, Dorothy? Once you strip away the gruff exterior, the badge, the gun, the uniform, Dorothy, you've got a naked policeman. Blanche. Exactly. Sophia. Hey, you dumb bodgigaloop. Your face looks like the rear end of a donkey. Dorothy. Oh God, I'm crazy nuts about this guy. Rose. I'll do it. I'll be the plant. Sophia. You are the plant. Dorothy. Rose, honey, you don't do too well under pressure. Sophia. Excuse me. It's only 4 a.m. Why don't you get a rubber hose and whack me around until I'm razor sharp? Sophia. Now get some rest, pussycat. Tomorrow could be your last day. Rose. They keep talking about that noodle head in the red dress. Could that be code language? Dorothy. Only to the noodle head in the red dress. This episode is most definitely one of my favorites in the series. Probably one of my top 50 or top 100, I'd say. I don't know. But we'll have to decide as we go along. But To Catch a Neighbor is, in short, about new neighbors that move in next door. And apparently they are jewel thieves. And these two lovely, handsome detectives come to the door, and Blanche is smitten with both and wants both. And then, so one is Mullins, and then the other one is Bobby. And Bobby, in case you were not aware, is played by George Clooney. And so, of course, Blanche is over the moon for these two guys. And this is one of those rare stories where there's really just a single story that we follow from beginning to the end. Most of the time, there's a story A and a story B, but this is again one of those where it's really mostly just a story A and how that affects each person. They've already met these neighbors and they like them and they get along well, but now they've got this wrench thrown in because they've learned that these neighbors are jewel thieves and they're most likely going to go to jail, and the police want their help. So they're divided on letting the police officers stay there for the stakeout. 2 are for it, 2 are against it. And so they finally agree that, yeah, they will let them. But as the stakeout progresses, it causes a lot of different tensions. We learn that Dorothy actually has a thing for Detective Mullins. And we also learned that Bobby reminds Blanche of her son Matthew. So she's not going to have any romantic things going towards Bobby, aka George Clooney, in this episode. But we also see that Mullins and Dorothy are just having this really crazy madcap fight. Constantly, they're just at each other's throats. They can't even be civil. Turns out they both like each other. And then Sophia just finds the whole situation kind of annoying because she wants her kitchen back. She likes to cook. And Rose just kind of keeps freaking out. She ran into Mrs. McDowell in the grocery store, and she actually followed her around the entire store and wrote down everything she bought. And it was kind of strange. And I'm sure Mrs. McDowell thought it was strange too. When she comes over and invites them to dinner again, she comments on it. Rose is not exactly subtle, So she's not gonna hide all that well. But yeah, so with this new invite to dinner, the situation comes up where there's a possible bug plant. And each person has to really think hard on it because they could do well, they could not do well, and they could all get shot. So it becomes very interesting because so far up until this dinner, they've just kind of enjoyed this as like, oh, this is fun and games. This is what like one aspect of police work. And they don't really understand the danger that's going on right next door to them. And so when they actually hear from the bug, because Dorothy wound up planting the bug, but yeah, it's weird as they go running next door and they all get told to stay on the floor, crouch down. It's the first time for them that the danger of this situation really where they actually process it, they actually realize it, they grasp how dangerous it could be. And then when Mullins comes running back in, calling for help because Bobby was shot, I mean, they all go into a panic. The hospital, Mullins finally asks her out, but she says, no, no, I can't. And he realizes it's because his job is just too dangerous, and she's not able to live with the thought that each day the person she loves might not come home from work. And I know that a police officer job is not the only one where you run the risk of not coming home from work. Anyone in the military that applies to, firefighters, even EMTs, and people who work at hospitals. I mean, lately it's not even safe to go to the grocery store with all the shootings that are taking place. And so it's just quite a scary situation when the person you love has a job where each day when they leave to go to work, it could be the last time that you see them. Not everyone can cope with that. Not everyone can live with that. Not everyone can even understand what's that like for the person doing that job, where they know that each day could be their last. And I think that it really brings home the value of life. Life that's actually wanted. Relationships that are actually wanted, the value of things that are actually wanted, and the loss of those things due to circumstances that you can't control. It is very painful to lose someone that you love. In the last couple of years, I've lost two people that I love. I wasn't in a romantic relationship with them, they were family members, but still. And it's not just romantic relationships where that person could be lost. It could be your son, your daughter, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your brother, your sister. I mean, the list just goes on and on, even just your friend. But it is a scary thought because we all sometimes tend to take life for granted. We tend to take for granted that we wake up every morning. Not everyone wakes up every morning. And it's important to tell the people you love that you love them. Thanks for tuning in to the I Love This TV Show podcast. If you would like to make a donation in support of this podcast, you can through Cash App to Pasta26MC. That's pasta like the food, the number 2, the number 6, M as in monkey, C as in cat. If you would like to sponsor this podcast or advertise on it, please send an email to podcast@pastasworld.com. As always, you can go to pastasworld.com for more information.